Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining the 10th annual Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund Black History Support Group meeting. My name is Mike Smith. I am the president and CEO of Smith & Sons, LLC in Washington, D.C. I'm an alumnus of Howard University. I'm a member of Men Take 10 and a proud member of Westminster Presbyterian Church, the home of Monday Night Blues and Friday Night Jazz in Southwest DC. Thelma and I are community activists, especially in the area of community health. As cancer warriors on the battlefield, we serve together on the Howard University Hospital Cancer Center Advisory Council. Our work on the council assures our neighbors' best interests are considered in the development of new cancer treatment. Thank you, Thelma, for the honor to serve as this evening's MC. Before we get started, let me share that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund Facebook page within the next 24 hours. And I politely ask that everyone mute themselves while other audience members are speaking. Thank you. Now, it is my distinct honor to introduce to maybe only 5 people in the audience who don't know her, my good friend and fellow warrior. I say warrior because the struggle continues. She's my shero and founder of the Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund, Ms. Thelma D. Jones, who present our distinguished speaker for this evening. Thelma.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you so much for agreeing to MC this wonderful celebration of Black History Month, where we will focus on breast cancer in men, men's health, and behavioral health. I am so honored to have this distinguished panel of guests. And while all of you are special, Deborah, can I ask that you mute yourself, please?
I'll be ready in a few minutes.
Sergio or Rodney, can you please mute Debbie?
Yes.
Thank you.
No.
And I guess I should ask if you can please be patient with us with the technology and our audience member who want to be heard, even though they may not be specifically on the program. Tonight, we have a range of audience here from, I see people from Greensboro, North Carolina, from Snow Hill, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas. Kermit is from a part of North Carolina. Robert Jones is here from Durham, Raleigh, and Snow Hill. I never can keep up with where he's living these days. So I am very happy to welcome you, and I am especially happy to have my cousin, my congressman in a way, the Honorable Donald G. Davis that we will hear from later on. I am also especially honored that the Southwest Business Improvement District is our sponsor for the 4th time in a year. Let's give the Southwest BID a hand. And I know Andre Witt, who is their Chief Operating Officer, will tell us who the BID is and all the wonderful things that they are doing, including the recognition that they gave me, but I won't steal his thunder. The Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund is a 501c3 nonprofit grassroots organization. We were founded first as a support group in 2010, and we evolved into a full-fledged organization in 2012 on the 60th anniversary of my birthday. And I'll let you do the math on that. Because I know even though I was born and raised on a farm and working in tobacco, just like Don Davis did, neither one of us have that. Well, I don't want to offend anybody that's born and raised on a farm, but we don't necessarily have that hardcore farm look. And I can say that as someone who was born and raised on a farm, and I have now evolved into a beautiful lady at 72 years old. Give Thelma a hand. Thank you. Thank you. The Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund pursues its mission through outreach, education, and support. And we emphasize early detection saves lives to create better outcomes. As Mike mentioned earlier, I am a warrior, a thriver, a breast cancer survivor of 17 years. And for every day that I am here, I am blessed, which is why I continue to do what I do. We do our work through outreach, education, support, and advocacy. And so throughout this meeting, you'll hear about some of the great advocacy work that we are doing. So again, I want to thank all of our special guests, in particular our speakers, Dr. Kermit Crawford, who is my high school classmate, and Dr. Richard Kennedy, who is not only, until he retired, my personal PCP, the PCP of several of my family members, and we were also colleagues during our years at the World Bank Group, where Dr. Kennedy served as the chief medical officer of the World Bank. And I always tell people he's one of the best doctors in the world, because when you're working at a place like the World Bank, where there's more than 150 different nationalities, you can't just know about yourself. You have to understand diseases and conditions of 150 some nationalities. So I'm so happy to have him not only as a speaker, but as a board member of the Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund. If times permit, I would tell you about some of our initiatives and what we will be doing for 2025. But given our late start, and I want to stay on time, I'm going to turn it back to our MC, Mike Smith. Mike, you're muted.
Yes, here I am. Okay. Thank you, Thelma, for that inspiring welcome and for updating us on highlights for the upcoming months. We look forward to those events. Now, I'd like to welcome Reverend Dr. Mark Colbert to offer the blessing. Reverend Colbert is a seminarian at St. Augustine's Episcopal Church and the Virginia Theological Seminary. Thelma attends church at St. Augustine with Reverend Colbert, and the Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund holds its in-person meetings there. Reverend Colbert.
Well, thank you for that introduction, sir. Just a quick clarification. I'm not a doctor. I don't have my doctor's degree yet or anytime soon. So we're gonna hold off on that.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah, wishful thinking. Just not yet, not yet. Ms. Thelma did ask me to introduce myself. Just like you said, sir, I am the Reverend Mark Colbert. I am currently a senior at Virginia Theological Seminary, about to achieve my Master of Divinity degree in order to become a priest. I'm right now an ordained deacon in the Diocese of East Tennessee, and while I also serve as a seminarian at St. Augustine's Episcopal Church with Miss wonderful Thelma Jones. So with all that being said, let us gather ourselves in a moment of prayer. We are gathered here in your name, O Lord, for those who are part of the Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund annual Black History Month and celebration, in order to discuss these topics of breast cancer in men, mental health, and mental behavior. We ask that in this time together, we respect each other's time and space to accomplish your person among us, O God. Tune into our hearts and the voice of your Spirit. Wake us to be present to you and to one another in these shared hours we are given. For it is you, O God, who have gathered us together from various places. Among us are some who are rejoicing, our hearts filled by the good news which you have all called us here together. May we find our grace in sorrow and embrace in each other and in you. Let us prize these moments and care for one another deeply, for we share in remembrance of one another and the presence that you have shared with us. Breathe life upon us and gather in your Spirit, O God. Grant each of us a place of humble recipients and faithful servants, that we may know you in this brief gathering and foresight taste that you have accomplished to us. O Father, enlarge in our hearts. O Spirit, examine our vision. O Christ, establish your kingdom among us. Be in the works even now, O God. May your will in us in these hours be accomplished. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Ashe. All right. Okay. All right, folks. How many of you know that men can have breast cancer too? I'm also a member of the Howard University Hospital Cancer Center, the Men Take 10 group. We meet on the second Wednesdays through Zoom to discuss Black men's health issues. And I admit I was unaware about men's susceptibility to the scourge until Richard, he's a bad mother, shut your mouth, Shaft Roundtree, was diagnosed with it. Well, tonight, as Thelma has mentioned, we will focus on breast cancer in men, men's health, and behavioral health, as we are facing some challenging times that continue to affect many of us in many areas, especially emotionally. Emotionally. Just think about it. We might wake up and find out we don't have a job. We got bills, we got responsibilities, we got psychological and also physical health to be concerned with. We will discuss why men's health matters and how you can become effective advocates for men's health and beyond. I am a veteran of 2 cancer wars. The first war was against skin cancer. Yeah, Black folks get skin cancer too. My second war was that I'm fighting now currently is prostate cancer. Trust me, gentlemen, you must know your PSA like you know your Social Security number. I didn't suffer any pain, but I have cancer. If you see a spike in your PSA, there's an excellent chance you can beat prostate cancer. Many of the brothers in Men Take 10 have prostate issues, and our mission is to educate ourselves and the community. I will post our email contact in the chat later on. I had the pleasure of meeting our next speaker last month, Mr. Andre Witt, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Southwest Business Improvement District. Andre's organization has been the Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund sponsor for 4 consecutive years. And we enthusiastically thank this wonderful organization for being a staunch supporter. Andre.
Michael, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
As Michael stated, I'm Andre Witt. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Southwest Business Improvement District. I come to you on behalf of my Executive Director, Steve Moore, Managing Director Lexi Albee. And we just want to say how honored we are to be this sponsor for this wonderful Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund annual Black History Month celebration. And Mike, I'm like you. I was totally unaware that African-American men could suffer from breast cancer until I too heard the story of Richard Roundtree. And Thelma, I just want everyone to know just what wonderful work you are doing and how we treasure you here in Southwest. You have been a true ally to us, and we know we can count on you for many, many things. You know, we have this Inspire Success Day event each year, and it is to inspire people to be the best they can be. And regardless of what you're going through, there's someone there to help you. And so we have partners. We had 22 partners this past year, and Thelma was one of them. Thelma's booth was one of the most visited booths at our event. And it was because people were very concerned about their health. And people know, people know Thelma's story, and they're captivated by it. She's a survivor. She's a true soldier. And so she motivated many individuals that particular day to get excited and take their health much more seriously than they had in the past. Now, I will say this, there were 22 booths set up that particular day from all sort of different agencies. And if you know Thelma, you know Thelma had to have the most beautiful booth you ever seen. Flowers, colorful disarray of just all sort of displays. She had swag that I had never seen before, and how she got it in the color of pink is still a mystery to us. But Thelma, we truly love you, and the work that you have done in the community truly inspires us. To the point that we were asked by media sources, who is it in Southwest that just really inspires and captivates the community? And we nominated Thelma. And a piece was, I'm not sure if Thelma has how many people have seen this, and I hope, Thelma, you will pass this along to the folks on this meeting. But a wonderful segment was captured, and it was basically about the contributions of Thelma D. Jones. Thelma, we honor you. I made you a promise 4 years ago that we will always sponsor your event. We're here for you. We want you to know how much we love you, and we're so honored to be a part of this. Thank you so much. Mike, back to you.
I want to
Andre,
make sure I
there's
paid you
something
enough,
else, man.
Andre.
I want to thank you, and I was going to ask that you please continue to do the good work that you're doing and support this fantastic organization. Thank you, sir. Next, I want to introduce the Honorable Congressman Don G. Davis, representing North Carolina's 1st District. That includes Thelma's town of Snow Hill. Congressman?
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Mike, for
Yes, sir.
facilitating tonight. It means so much, and I see so many amazing people here that's joining us. Hello, Miss Brother Kermit Crawford, the legendary. That's one of Greene County's greats, y'all. And I mean, I see so many other Robert, but let's pause right here, right now, and give my cousin Thelma a big old hand for what she continues to do at the foundation. We love you so much, and thank you for bringing us together in a way that we are able to increase awareness. I mean, I say this, I remember we were together last year, and I still remember what Kermit talked about. He said, you said, be a bad, I'm gonna leave it there. Am I right? So I'm saying this is so important that we come together and do this work. And especially as I see African-American men in particular, when we talk about, it's Black History Month, and we talk about health. I want to be clear. I represent 22 counties in Eastern North Carolina, including Thelma's home. County, Greene County. When you look at Eastern North Carolina, I want everyone that's not familiar with this part of the state, of those who are from this area and maybe in other places now, to understand that this is one of the most healthy, health challenge areas in the state of North Carolina. We experience the greatest healthcare disparities than any other part of the state, from birth to death. I mean, we have African-American women so often dealing with infant mortality, then dealing with chronic illnesses, heart disease, stroke, diabetes. Even to when I talked and spoke with my healthcare administrator, he showed me the numbers. If you're living in Eastern North Carolina, it's part of the state, your life expectancy is less. So we have to continue to have these conversations and dialogues to continue to increase awareness. Black men, we can get breast cancer. It is clear. And when we think about males with breast cancer, here's another number to hold on to. In terms of new cancer cases, you have about 20,000 cases each year that we're seeing from around the world. About 20,000 cases. And what we definitely should be aware of, obviously, some of the early signs would typically be a lump. And we have to take this serious. We have to take it serious. This can be linked to our family in terms of hereditary. And most importantly, it can be deadly. But above all, it can be treated. It can be treated if we continue to take the steps to increase awareness. And let me tell you about something I'm so proud of here in Snow Hill, North Carolina, in Greene County. We have our postal service, and our post office participates in the broader postal breast cancer awareness, and 70% of the proceeds go on to support research. But hear this, in little old Snow Hill, North Carolina, population less than 2,000, we tend to be, for 2 years in a row, we've come second in place in funds proceeds raised. And hear this, 14th in the nation. So that shows the importance of awareness, the power of community when you rally a community in support of especially those who may be going through experiencing. I want to give a few shout outs tonight. You've heard from those who are sponsoring. We must never, ever take it lightly. To Southwest Business Improvement District. Brother Andre, you made that commitment. You made that commitment, and you've come through once again. Thank you so much. We can never, ever take it for granted. Want to give a big shout out to Rob with our postmaster in Snow Hill. And ladies and gentlemen, let's give my cousin Thelma another big hand. And thank you so much what you continue to do with the foundation. We love you. Mwah.
Thank you, Representative Davis, for adding your support to not only your homegirl, but your cousin.
There you go.
Mighty cancer warrior. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I invite, let's see.
Mike.
Mike. Yes.
Because I hope Don will stay on the whole evening.
Oh, he will. He's your cousin.
But in case he slips off, I wanted to know if anyone had any questions about this wonderful gentleman. And Don, if you could just confirm that you're the first African-American to join Congress who graduated from the Air Force Academy?
Yes, I graduated from the United States Air Force Academy in 1994. And there's only been 4 graduates from the United States Air Force Academy to serve in Congress. And you're looking at the first African-American graduate of the Air Force Academy that's now serving in the United States Congress on the Armed Services Committee, and was just appointed cousin as the vice ranking member of the committee. So.
And can you just tell us a little bit about how challenging your race was? Because I kept reading how challenging it was throughout the country, and the positions that you have held that has brought you here.
I'm gonna give you a very short version because I really want to continue to stay focused on. I know breast cancer and Thelma, that's your life, and you've just really challenged us so much. But I'm honored to be raised in Snow Hill, North Carolina. I was born downtown, and if you look at these hands, they crop tobacco too, y'all. I know about that. And I went on to um, graduated from the Air Force Academy, served 8 years active duty, came back and ran for mayor of Snow Hill. And I can tell you at the time I'd moved back because I left from a little thing. I may have been the only one that thought I could win the race, but I'm telling you, when you bring a community together, we walked away running against a 10-year incumbent and won the election with 63% of the vote. Went on to get reelected as mayor, and we went from there to the North Carolina General Assembly. Served 12 years. At the time, I was leaving out. I was the 4th ranking member, the 2nd ranking Democrat, and I'm now entering the 2nd term in the United States House of Representatives. And above all of that, I really just love Thelma so much, and thank you for all that you do. I mean, you're such an advocate, and you're just a beautiful person inside and out.
Thank you, Don. We got some questions for you. Sherry? Sherry?
First of all, I echo everything you say about your aunt. I mean, I know we're on the topic of breast cancer, but I'm from a farm as well. And I think that you have a theme, where you've been. I mean, you look very, very young to have done all the stints that you just described. But I know that you're in a fight of your life being on the Armed Services Committee as an African American and as a Democrat. And I thank you for your service. And I think it shows that you echo what we do in the cancer world, which is being a survivor and a thriver. And if you're not healthy, you can't do what you do every day for all of us. So I thank you. We need your fight more than anything, especially after, I won't talk politics, but the Ukraine situation has me very upset about the whole security of our nation. And so stay healthy, and you come from good roots. My dad always said that soil that they gave the Jews was filled with rocks, but they made it work.
Hey,
so thank you.
Well, Miss Cheryl, let me just share with you. It's such an honor, and I just had so much love and support growing up. Brother Kermit and Robert, I mean, they whipped me up a little bit into shape, but but I wanted to share this as well. Also honored, we serve on 2 committees. I'm on Armed Services and also Agriculture. So that's definitely a big topic. And obviously, when we talk about health, I mean, I really think it's a whole nother Zoom that we could do in terms of eating and what we put into our bodies, but I'm gonna leave that one alone tonight.
Any other questions for the congressman?
Thank you. Because what
I
you're,
got one.
Uh-oh.
okay. I was just saying, even though you felt as though that was taken away from the focus of the meeting, I totally feel that what you were saying was in keeping with our theme, and particularly around agriculture, what we put in our body. It's food is who we are. And also even about the armed services. We can eat well, but we also still have to be protected on a broader scale. So it all fitted in. And I wanted my breast cancer family to know about the great things that you have done so that when I start calling on you more to advocate for us on a greater level for breast cancer or cancer, then they'll know, okay, this is Thelma's cousin. So thank you, Don.
Well, let me know anytime. And just to let everyone know, we work on so many issues. But if you look at our bills by number, just because of the constituents that we're serving, most of my bills are healthcare related.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank
Bless
you.
Congressman, I got a couple of questions.
Uh-oh.
I got to say, first of all, did you know Rob Day?
Rob Day, that
Yeah.
name sounds
Air
familiar.
Force. Yeah, Air Force Academy. Well, he's older than you.
Okay. Do you
well
know the
before
year?
I don't.
Okay.
He's
Okay, don't know.
probably, yeah, he's probably in his early 60s.
Okay.
I don't know. Listen, I was concerned about what you were saying about that part of North Carolina being agriculturally laden with a lot of chemicals and a lot of activities, a lot of sewage. I was watching a film. It was called "What the Health." What the Health? I don't know if you've seen it, but it was just awful, and they were talking about the runoff and the sewage from agriculture and how our community is impacted by that. And given the state that we're in now politically and the atmosphere we're in, I was just wondering how much support do you realize for the next year or two or 4 years coming from the federal government?
Yeah. Let me say this. When we talk about environmental justice, broadly speaking, what we know African American communities tend to be the greatest impacted. But I want to share just a nugget because Eastern North Carolina, we have a really rich history. I'll give you an example. Martin Luther King, this is February, Black History Month. Martin Luther King actually is recorded, and the original recording where he actually delivered "I Have a Dream" speech before the March on Washington in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And it was just interesting because he was talking about "I Have a Dream" and he was talking in the context of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina. Some other history, Sarah Keys Evans. I mean, she actually was arrested for sitting on the bus in Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. This was years before Rosa Parks. So we have rich history, but here's another part of our rich history. The environmental justice movement really started out of our district. And we were just recognized actually last year, but the secretary came down and I'm saying all this to say it's not something you're proud of, but if there's anything you are proud of, is that we're moving forward to take steps as advocates, and that's part of the spirit of Thelma. Just in a different light to come and advocate and increase awareness. I think all this is so important, and especially every 5 years, the Agriculture Committee, we reauthorize what's called the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is a huge, massive bill that really sets the policy, the tone for agriculture. So that's one of the bigger things that we have to continue to work on. And not only that, but do everything we can. And we're meeting with the group of Black farmers Friday. You're right on target. There's a lot of work and opportunities to work in this space, and it's something that is just so important to me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other questions for the congressman?
Well,
Okay,
there might be some more, but I think we've given Don enough airtime.
Thanks, y'all.
we know how to get in contact with you.
Yes, and we hope you'll come back in June with
Yes.
National Men's National Health Month to be a part of that.
Thank you so much, sir. All right. Listen, folks, we were going to have a special guest with us, but I understand that he won't be able to make it. And, you know, his story and his wife were so important to this movement. Thelma, can you talk about Chris Dauphin a little bit?
Surely. Chris Dauphin is the spouse of the late Lori L. Wilson, who gives the word breast cancer advocate, activist, and thriver a whole new meaning.
Yes.
He has been a part of basically every major cancer, and particularly breast cancer organization in the country. She also traveled to Africa on breast cancer missions. And I understand there were times when she needed to return to Howard, but because of her passion and dedication, she extended her trips in Africa to ensure that women had the proper care and service that they needed. Lori was a professor at Howard University, and she also worked with the Howard University Cancer Center, where I had the great honor of working with her. Lori spoke, I want to say, at least 3 times at my breast cancer support group meeting. And she was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. And many of you know that that is one of the most challenging and worst form of breast cancer that really takes the lives and or a lot of African-American women are diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer. Her cancer returned, and unfortunately, Laura passed away in October of 2022. I had the great honor of Howard University Cancer Center bestowing upon me the first Lori L. Wilson Conquering Cancer Award. And it was a very emotional time because I received the award on Thursday night, and Lori passed early the next morning. So I always sort of feel like she wanted to stay around long enough to see me receive her award. And I've dedicated a part of my life in this organization to helping to keep Lori's legacy alive. And if Chris was here, he would tell you what it was like being a caregiver, something that we don't often think about and reflect on. So he was going to tell you a bit about what it was like being a caregiver, not just a caregiver, but a caregiver to his wife. So, and I know Chris would have loved to have been here to have told you that himself. So thank you, Mike, for that opportunity.
Yeah, I thank you for your heartfelt comments about her. I would be remiss if I didn't ask someone to speak on Chris's behalf. Thank you so much, Thelma.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next, I want to present Dr. Kermit Crawford, PhD. He is the Emeritus Clinical Associate Professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Boston University School of Medicine. Dr. Crawford.
Thank you, sir. And good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
First I want to shout out to my homegirl, my classmate, Thelma D. Jones. And I say prophetically, she is a rock in a weary land for so many people. And so many people like me, we love you, Thelma. But I also recognize that as I get older, and as you know, you get older, and you start thinking that, well, maybe we better love everybody because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And but right now, it's good, and I'm very thankful for you. I also just want to make a shout out on the Congressman Davis, because I remember when he was a little Don running around. And I was up at his grandmama's house, and his mom and other sister and her sisters were there. And he would just run around all the time. The boy wouldn't go to sleep. And but you know, all of us, none of us were anything. And look where he is today. And so proud of you, so thankful for you, because I remember you were born I think it was the second year that I was in college. And from there off to the Air Force Academy, and then to mayor, and then to Congress. You're talking about blessing every step along the way. So proud of you. And you got to write a book soon, so you can write that next book later. But I'm here to say that I do love everybody, but that don't mean I like everybody. So if you could put up the video, the PowerPoint. Is that ready? Sergio, you got it?
So
Or
yes, the slides, the presentation.
yes, yes.
Okay, yes, one moment. Share.
So this is a little bit different because it's talking about sort of a kind of a psychological component or a composite of where we are right now. But I think it's helpful to everyone, no matter what stage or where you are in life, to be able to sort of keep certain things in perspective. One of those things, uncertainty, is what we're dealing with. And there's research that shows that in a study of individuals receiving electrical shock, that it was more stressful for the individuals who got 50% of the shock, or 50% of the time they got shocked, versus the individuals who got shocked 100%. This was a controlled experiment. So the idea, the notion is that it was stress that was really the outcome, the quantitative outcome to consider whenever we're dealing with issues of uncertainty. Another piece that I want you to keep in mind is fear is a part of this. Not yet, not yet. Well, you can leave it right there. You can leave it there. But fear. I'm also talking about quality of life. And a lot of these things are in the category of quality of life, because we deserve quality lives, all of us, to the extent that we can have those and lived experience. Okay, sir, you can move it down to the first. And this is just a quick format of the way that we typically make decisions. So something comes to us, we think about it, we reflect on it, we may talk to other people, and then ultimately we get to the decision. And if there's action involved, we take the action, and then it feeds back to us from there as to whether it was right, whether it was wrong, whether it was good, whether it was bad, and whether we do the same thing again. But now, what we're dealing with, at least on the level that Congressman Davis deals with, but all of us are tuned into, is the next slide, which is there's something else in the mix here. And where we were making decisions before and moving on with our lives, there's an intervening factor now. It's not just 47. There are other things that can be there too. But 47 is definitely a part of that, because I think about measles. And measles is now making a comeback primarily in Texas, like 60 cases. We had declared measles as eliminated in the year 2000, measles. But yet it's made a comeback. Why? Because we took our foot off the accelerator, because we paid attention to other things, because we thought that the problem had been solved. And I feel like in a lot of ways, what we're dealing with right now, generally in the country, is a problem that we thought had been solved. Now, it may have been solved to an extent on an individual level, but on a broader level, institutional level, racism and the other isms were not solved. And it took 47 and others that are related to him to bring that out and to make things in the uncertainty that I mentioned before a lot more challenging for all of us. Fear is a part of that as well. Next slide. So when we get to this point in our lives, I remember, next slide, please. I remember a poster that I got back when I was a freshman in college. And the next one, the next slide. For those of you who may not be able to read it, it says, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. And this is something that we're always considering, always wondering about. But there are differences because it's not, paranoia is a psychological diagnosis. And by the way, I'm a clinical psychologist and have been for a number of years. And we don't see as much of this. There are other diagnoses that we see. But I remember when I was in training and I worked in prisons, there were a number of people that carried the symptoms of this particular diagnosis. Next slide. But as we think about this, when I did this slide, I wanted to put, just the challenges that we have on a daily basis. If you think about all of these things, and some of us might have all of these things, or just some of these things, but we call it personal equation because the individuals that have some of these things may be as challenged as individuals that have all these things, but continue to move forward. But this is the burden, this is the load that we carry on a daily basis. And now we're going to add this other thing of the fear and uncertainty to it. Next slide. I wanted to make a distinction between stress and anxiety. Stress is a normal physiological reaction, but it's psychological. It can be emotional. It can be physical, and it can be behavioral. Behavioral being avoiding things because of the stress that might be associated with it. But stress itself is something that we all hold all the time, just from the slide that I just showed. But anxiety is not, because anxiety has a persistence that stress does not have. Stress is usually related to a particular event. Like when I was at school, and my dad was the principal of the black school before it closed in Snow Hill, North Carolina. And if I did something at school, you know how bad news beats you home? Well, if I did it at school and the teacher saw it and I did some things, and then I got home, I'm there being really stressed because I know dad is going to come home. So that's not going to be the end of the story when he comes home, because it's like he's going to have something in his hand that's going to make me feel real different when he finishes doing what he's doing. Stress. But if I walked around with that kind of emotional baggage, that kind of psychological baggage, if I had physical symptoms or if I had behavioral symptoms that persisted on and on and on, then that will more likely be anxiety. And if it is anxiety persisting over a period of time, excessive worry over external stressors, similar to what we have, as I talked about in that big institutional picture and nationally, then maybe professional help might be needed. But it's something to consider because we all don't get out of this without stress. Next slide. And I mentioned some of the ways that stress can manifest, and you can see it here. Of course, the physical symptoms like the heart rate, sweating, tension, fatigue, emotional, which is anxiety, but we're talking short-term anxiety. If you talk about acute stress related to an event, that can look like anxiety, but it's not because it doesn't have that persistent, sustaining quality. Irritability, nervousness, a feeling of just being overwhelmed. And cognitively, difficulty concentrating, memory problems, poor decision making. It can also be related to the tendency to ruminate, to just continue to reflect over and over and over on a particular item. For me, I can tell I'm stressed when I wake up at night and I can't go back to sleep because my mind sort of gets engaged in something, which is why whenever I wake up, I try as soon as I can to just sort of calm down and think about something different. And eventually sleep sort of finds me again. But that's all part of stress, and that's normal stress. And then the behavioral symptoms that I've mentioned, avoidance and stagnation. Next slide. Now, some of us are bad. But the reality is that, because we can rationalize like, what makes you, what doesn't kill you, make you stronger. But we don't know that it's not going to kill us first. Because the reality is that stress too, as anxiety, can bust a pipe. It can break a chain. But it can also just make us so out of control, focused on what's going on, that we lose a sense of so many other things around us, as the slide that I printed before. And those things can go awry and create additional stress. So stress is something that we have to be aware of and have to manage. Next slide. This was one I just threw in because my son, my oldest son, is such a Star Trek fan. But my face, when someone tells me stress balls are for squeezing, this is my face when someone tells me that, and not for throwing at people who stress me out. We feel that way, but the reality is that we can't do that. Although others seem to do that, but we can't do it. We've got to stay on the higher ground, even though there's some things I think we have to change to make that higher ground available for all of us. Next slide. So what do you do? What do you do? Focus on those things that you can control, those things that are within bounds that you have control over. And that's important to be reinforced, that you're not just at a random for everything that's happening. You're not at the mercy of everything that's happening. The idea is that you're able to control some things, that you're going to keep those things in check. Lest you forget. And what I mean by that is that we've all been through something before. And some of us, even worse times. I think back to when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. I think back to George Floyd's murder. And there are so many others in my lifetime that I think back even in Snow Hill to white only, and when we couldn't go to certain parts of town. And it was right near the congressman's great-grandmother's house that we couldn't go much further down than that because we were in the white section, and there were times that it wouldn't be good to be there. Those things are our lived experience. And things have been worse. I can't imagine what it must have been like during the period that we were in the bondage of slavery. But yet we came through that and then worked to a time where we got the vote. Should have had it in the beginning, but it took time. We lived through that, and we'll live through now because there has been worse and we've made it through. It's important for each of us to find our place of peace. Does that mean music for you? And I'll mention music a little bit further down. Does that mean just contact with others? Where is that place of peace for you? Could be in bed, could be alone somewhere in your comfortable chair in front of a fire. But each of us needs to know where that place is, that we won't let the stress intrude upon us in that place. We also have to show gratitude. Gratitude is really important. I was the director of the Boston Marathon Bombing Victims Resiliency Center when I was at Boston University. One of the things that I did over the 19 years that I was there. So after the bombing had occurred, many of the victims, those who hadn't died, came through the center. And what we found is that for them to be able to find some level of closure, they had to go through a period of gratitude. And part of the gratitude was giving things back. So we understood, for those of you who've heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and now it's been extended to 8 levels. The 8th level, the top level, rather than self-actualization, is transcendence. And we found that for people to get to that place, general categorical definitions, for them to get to that place, it was for them to be able to give back. So we saw a number of the victims of the Boston Marathon bombing um, that would solicit money for the other victims, for their prosthetics, for their housing, for their mental health, extended mental health care, that they would be there helping and going out and doing those things themselves. I remember one gentleman who had lost both his legs in the bombing, who was walking in Boston Marathon and supporting a blind individual who was walking the Boston Marathon. But gratitude is really important. Next slide. Further, what to do, I've mentioned some of these. Keep connection with others. And also deconnect from certain things. You don't need to watch the news because all the news is the same thing. And I know it's hard because you figure something else is going to happen. And that's all by design to keep you engaged, both on the part of the newscasters, but also on part of the administration that's in place right now. Don't play that game. You know, find a way that you can get the news and stay up on the news, but a way that you don't have to sit there in front because there's almost nothing you can do except take it in. But also keep connection to those people that are important to you and continue to be with them. That's part of your place of peace. Give back, create change. I mentioned that in the Boston Marathon victims. Meditation, exercise, yoga, music, and journaling. All these things can be important. And I've tried all these things. But for me, the place of peace is what's really important. And then engaging with people who are really connected to me. But you got to find your own. Whatever works for you, just make sure that you know that because that helps you deal with the stress that you have to deal with. Next slide. I haven't mentioned what the Lord has done in all of this, and I think it's going to be important for those of us who believe. Because I kind of figured that, you know, for little David to go out against Goliath, and I try to think back and wouldn't even wear the armor that had been given to him, he had to believe. And I know the Reverend Congressman could talk about this even more than I can. But the reality is that he stood up to an insurmountable challenge, which is what we're doing in a lot of ways. But we all have to always believe that if God is on our side, then there is nothing that can prevail against us. And I truly believe that in all the other stuff that we do. And I'm going to do my part because I figure I got to take one step before the Lord takes two for me. But there have been times that the only steps behind me were those that the Lord took. And I think it's important that we realize that, those of us who believe again, that this will also help us get through this difficult time. Next slide, which is that for those of you who know Lucille Clifton, I love this excerpt from one of her poems. She's a poet. Come, celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. And to me, that is the blessing that we carry. I had a discussion with a friend a couple of days ago who was saying that, you know, we are in fact a friend out of Snow Hill that I'm sure that the congressman and Thelma and also our classmate Robert on here would know that we are the chosen people, because if we weren't, this would not be so. But we've got to use that and to use what we've been given for those of us who have gotten through to make the difference that's inside of us to make the others made for us. And to me, a lot of this is embodied in this excerpt from the poem. And that would be the last part of my presentation, as I recall. Is there another slide? I think it's just me. What? Huh? Come on. And I'm saying, come on now. We got this. Okay. Are there questions or comments?
Yes, Dr. Crawford.
Yes, sir.
If people are interested in following up with you, what is the best way?
Well, there are a couple of ways. The best way always is to send me a coupon for sweet tea and barbecue, and I'll find them. But my email is at the bottom there. It's
Can
K
you raise,
Crawford
yeah,
without
can you
the
raise
O.
that slide up? Can you raise that slide up? It's hard to see. Raise it up a little bit. Is that the best? Okay.
Well, I'll give it to you. It's KCRAWFRD. No
Okay,
O.
there it is. There it is.
Okay. At BU is in bostonuniversity.edu.
Okay, very good.
But as was mentioned, I'm in North Carolina now. I'm in Pittsburgh, which is just outside Charlotte, Chapel Hill, and I still maintain the appointment at Boston University and still get back there from time to time. But I'd be happy for anyone to be in touch with me because these things are important, and certainly would like to be able. I'm happy to share my slides. I'm happy to consult with anybody around that. And I'm saying this is about giving it away because this is my give back period of life. And I'm thankful to be able to do that.
Yes,
Thank,
sir.
thank you very much. Can we share your presentation on Thelma's website?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Crawford.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about the impact of what we ingest, what we eat and drink on our overall mental health, mental well-being?
You know, I wish that I could in detail, but if I could talk about it like this, it may be important. Anything that we do that doesn't leave our bodies alone or somehow make our health deteriorate enables us to have better mental health. Now, there are some things that we have to do in addition to that. I mean, sleep, for example. Um, if sweets or soft drinks or those kinds of things get in the way, you know they're not good for you. So it's going to create another kind of problem, especially as we get older, because as we get older, problems are going to pop up anyway. And I'm not one that likes to borrow trouble, but I try to do as many things as I can. I talk about sweet tea and barbecue, and I don't eat it as often as I really would like to, but I do eat it. But the idea is that sometimes that is satisfying for me and it's important for me, but I also know that that can create other kinds of problems. One of the things that I didn't talk about, for example, was substance use in this. And I'm not one to advocate substance use, but if you have those times in your life that you need to get by, and it helps you to just get by, and you haven't had a problem before, and it doesn't create a problem for you, and certain drugs can't. I mean, illicit drugs can do that, but alcohols, they don't necessarily do that. We haven't seen that evidence unless it had been a problem prior. Then I'm saying that why not just sort of do that? Some people pray to get through most difficult times, and other people just sort of dissociate or zone out for that sort of thing. But getting back to the point that you made, again, I don't think I can speak too deeply about it, but I also feel that physical health is aligned with mental health, at least to be able to give you a shot to have good mental health. I also asked the question of what is good mental health? Because, I remember coming through life, I dealt with a number of people who were mentally ill, and God bless those who are mentally ill. I say there, except by the grace of God, go I. But what I've had problems with is some of the people I work with, they just crazy. And that's a whole different thing. So, patience and ability to articulate, ability to be able to figure things out, that's really important as well, to be able to find that place of peace. Because even in the workplace, and some people may have said the same about me, I don't think I'm on the straight and narrow all the time either, but to find that place of peace for you that can really be important is important.
I
We
think
have a
Miss Sherry
question.
has a
Sherry.
question.
Yes.
You can take the slides down now, Sergio.
I wanted to ask you, Kermit, have you noticed, and I know you're not doing formal practice, but just a real uptick in the amount of stress moving towards anxiety in our culture today, based on so many of the pressures that you outlined in your slide with all of the words. Because in the press and in the media and in articles I read, especially the younger generation, while they have a real interest in working in places that have a good work-life balance, they are completely stressed over being able to finance their futures and do things that, quite frankly, when I was starting out in college, you know, I thought about it, but I didn't abuse my credit card and I didn't worry. You know, maybe I should have worried a little more, but I wasn't worried about 40 years later being broke and living in the floor of my parents' home, which today is a reality.
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up in a wealthy home at all. We had enough. That was it.
Well, you know, back in the day, many of us growing up, even in Snow Hill, we didn't understand the demands that were going to be down the line and waiting for us. And I understand what you're talking about. I certainly wish you well with that. You know, sometimes, you know, it's in the songs and that I listen to, because when I'm struggling with something, I'll think about, you know, and this is before some of you all were born, maybe a song like "If It Ain't One Thing, It's Another," or "Don't Push Me, 'Cause I'm Close to the Edge," you know, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, or even DMX, you know, "I'm about to lose my mind up in here, up in here." So I think about those kinds of things, and I think to try to understand the lyrics that are in the songs of many of the younger people right now. And frankly, I can't keep up with them all the time, but I try to read about them. And recently, reading about Kendrick Lamar's his production performance at the Super Bowl, to understand what a lot of that is about. But if many of the kids now, and not all of them, were brought up with those of us who had made progress in society, who had made significant progress, and we could disconnected the behavior from the consequence a lot of times. Because if we didn't get out and pick something in the field, if we didn't get somebody to help us to eat at that time, we didn't eat. If we didn't do it ourselves, we didn't eat. But my sons never grew up with that. They always had. And then when it comes time, you know, they were never working in the field. And I was in the Army also, and I knew that I would stay in the Army if I didn't do something else with my life. So for them not have that connection, many of them, between behavior and consequence, it really does make a challenge for them going forward. You are to be excused, because when we were coming up, I mean, Sherry, we didn't know. We just didn't know. We didn't have an idea. And now we have to deal with what we didn't know, when many of our kids may have known but didn't understand or didn't hear well enough to be able to do what they need to do. And they'll suffer other consequences down the line, unfortunately, unless we can do something to intervene.
I think social media, you know, not getting outside. I mean, I'm 57, so I'm not as wise as Miss Thelma, but you know, I was outside. I grew up in a very rural part of New York State. You know, we watched, you know, TV, Love Boat, and you know, all those game shows and sports, but we were outside all the time.
Absolutely.
A very rural area. Everything revolved around our school. Sports was, you know, you learn more on the field than you do about life. And now it's a very closed disinformation. And I truly think I worry about the mental health effects it's been written about, you know, and LA. There's a big article today that there was no blowback at all with the first day of school with no phones at all. So I really hope there's a turnaround.
And I hope there's a turnaround too. I think, you know, when you said being outside, I was thinking about when Congressman Davis was a little kid. We always would try to put him outside, and he would always run back in. And the only thing that, you know, I used to think, well, you know, he needs to just be outside sometimes instead of just always running around our necks, jumping all up and down. He's just cute as it could be. Was to ask his great grandmother, Miss Aileen, that not all of y'all know, if she would tell him to do something, because she had a switch that she would take care of. But the problem was, Miss Aileen would not only take care of him with the switch, but she'd take care of some of us with the switch too. So we were scared to even ask her. I'm still scared of Miss Aileen, and she's been gone for a while. But it takes people like that in the village to help you understand that there are consequences for what you do and to be able to work with them. Yeah, the notion of alternative facts or no facts, to me, there is right and there's wrong. You know, there's no question about that. So why now do you want to say something that's wrong? It could be right. And so many people are, are informed by that level of disinformation. So we've got work to do. But for those of us who are understand who have come through, it's part of our responsibility to try to change that. And there's a lot more to talk about. I don't want to take away so much time because this is about Thelma and her organization and what wonderful work you all are doing. But please, anybody be in touch with me anytime. I certainly be willing to explore this further with you.
I have, Dr. Crawford, I have one comment.
Yes, Dr. Kennedy.
Having sort of grew up in that time as well, but in New York City, and being poor, et cetera, I think our parents, as you said earlier, if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, you might not eat. Well, here, my parents said pretty much the same thing to us, except in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Dad said, you're going to be the first one in this family to go to college. Mm-hmm. And that's all I heard from the time I was 10. And the only reason I actually went to college was so that I would not get drafted because it was in the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
My draft number was number 2.
Whoa.
And then I found out after, I made a hamburger with a bar of Ivory soap as a cheese and ate it because you had to go down to the armory for the physical. I found out the next day that if I go to college, I got a deferment and I wouldn't have to go anyway. But I, and I, like you, I wanted to expose my kids to all that I wasn't exposed to growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted them to have more than me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one thing my dad always said. He said, there's always information out there. He says, but always trust, but verify.
Yes.
And what's lost in this next generation, I think, is that there's so much information out there. And because it's readily available, people don't take the time it's okay to hear the message.
Right.
But verify that that message has some merit before you then take the next step and create it as, and the media has really contributed to this because they've learned we have short attention spans.
Yes.
That's why they recycle the same thing every 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
And so even if you don't catch it, but I think that our job is to help them, because I believe my kids are much smarter than I ever was.
Yes.
They can simulate things differently. The difference is that you cannot escape the wisdom of your career.
Yes.
And the lessons that life has taught you along the way, that's where our job is, because I'm a firm believer we're all put here to make a difference.
Yes.
And that's what Thelma does every single day. She's a living angel in front of us every single day. And so your presentation is great because it made me think back to when I worked at Rikers Island. When I at the World Trade Center.
Yeah, I worked there too one time. Yeah.
So the dynamics and the things that you saw and the things that you interacted with, that we've come a long way. I mean, I've come a long way from where I was to where I am today. And so for me, it's that, and this is an honor for me to be here to support Thelma, this program. And it's wonderful because it opens up doors for all of us.
Yes. Yes.
We all have something to contribute. We all have something to say. And the world is much smaller, no matter how crazy it appears. As you said earlier, we've seen worse and we've come through it. And if you have faith,
Yes.
there's no way that you cannot. You have to rely on that. And one of the things is I tell people all the time that prayer works. It does.
It does. Absolutely.
We've all had those experiences. But I'll shut up because I'm gonna.
And I just want to make one other statement. I'm done too, which is faith is the substance of things hoped for and evidence of things unseen. And I believe that, and I have experienced that. But thinking about what Miss Sherry had mentioned, I remember when my youngest son, was 14 years old, and he asked me for some money. And I was saying, Benjamin, I don't have any money right now to be able to get this, but maybe we can get it later. And Witt said, yes, you do, Dad. Just go to the ATM. And what I realized is the boy only thought we took money out of the ATM, but never saw us put money in the ATM. And that said, we had some work to do. So we've got to work with this younger generation to get them the wisdom, which is the combination of knowledge and experience, because they're smarter, but to a combination of knowledge and experience to make the difference that you're talking about, Dr. Kennedy.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I have to say thank you to you two gentlemen for having that great conversation between the two of you. We all learned from that. So thank you. And Mike can now bring on Dr. Kennedy.
Well, thank you, Dr. Crawford, for those enlightening, insightful presentation. And I guess I could say thank you, Dr. Kennedy, for yours as well. How much time do we have, Thelma?
Okay, we are at 7:55, and our hard stop is 8:30 because then the system will go down.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Now I would like to, you've already heard from him, but I'd like to introduce him formally, Dr. Richard Kennedy, the former Chief Medical Officer with the World Bank Group and a Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund board member. Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and welcome everyone. Glad that you're all here. I'm actually going to try to be brief, which is typically hard for me to do. I'm going to talk about three things tonight: breast cancer, colon cancer, and prostate cancer. And I'll start with the breast cancer, as has been mentioned earlier. That is, yes, it is unusual that people would expect that a man can get breast cancer, but understanding that we have breast tissue, just like women, we just don't have as much. And yes, it is a rare condition compared to, for instance, women are, and Black women are 70 times more likely to develop breast cancer in their life than a man is, than an African-American man. White women are 100 times more likely to have breast cancer in their lifetime compared to a white man. That being said, and this is true across all health issues, because of the disparities in care, etc., whenever we get something, it tends to be more aggressive at the time that it presents itself. Now, typically, breast cancer in men is thought of happening after the age of 60. But I've had patients 28 years old who had breast cancer. And it's important to know in this coming year, they expect 2,800 new cases of breast cancer in men and 510 deaths. Now, 52%, and there is a 52% higher incidence in Black men with breast cancer as it relates to their white counterparts. And typically it is in a more aggressive state at the time of diagnosis. Now, there's really no screening technically for breast cancer in men. That being said, it presents pretty much like it will do for women, in that a woman feels a lump in her breast, she goes to her doctor and eventually gets evaluated. Same thing for men. You go, you tell the doctor you have a lump, and typically, but not always, it is in and around the nipple. It can be right under the nipple, it can be to the left, to the right. The nipple can retract, the nipple can have drainage, etc. All of those would be symptoms. The first thing that should happen is that your provider should examine it, feel it, check under your arms, because that's typically, just like in women, the breast cancer extends into the lymph glands in the arm and the armpit. So you check there as well. And from there, you go and get a mammogram. And as most women will tell you, mammograms tend to be very uncomfortable because of the way the pressure is. Now, maybe it's gotten better over the years, but I don't, when I talk to my family, they don't speak all that highly of the experience. And so, but the mammogram is the way to go. From there, it would be an ultrasound, and you literally would treat it pretty much the same way that you would for a woman. Once you've done a biopsy and you confirm that there's breast cancer, you basically will have a mastectomy. You may then have chemotherapy or radiation or hormone therapy or a combination of that. And you will find. And one of the speaker who wasn't able to attend was going to sort of tell you his journey, that any cancer, and I always tell this to every person, is that once a cancer survivor, you're a cancer survivor for life, because it can return. And it does. And it does. And we see that. Now, that the lifetime risk of getting breast cancer in a man is 1 in 72, to where the 1 in 726. And again, as I said earlier, all of the cancers that men get, the ductal cancer, which is the most important one and the most frequent one in women, is the same in men. And the survival rate is 65 to 70% if you catch it early. It drops precipitously, down into the 30% range if you don't. And it's, I think the important thing is, know what your family history is. So, for instance, if a family member had breast cancer, a woman, mom, sisters, then you're at greater risk of having breast cancer in your lifetime. And at that juncture, one should automatically start doing genetic testing to see if you carry the gene for what we call the BRCA1 and BRCA2. There are other things that put us at risk. Older age. The older men, and again, that is the majority of the cancers, but again, there are always outliers. And so you always want to check that. Anything that would, by definition, increase the amount of estrogens in the male body makes it more likely. So obesity, liver disease, because liver disease affects the hormones as they go through the body. Any male who's had any kind of testicular procedure, be it testicular surgery for mumps or things like that, put them at greater risk. And so it's important, one can live with this, but one should always think about, and this is no different than what we tell women to do breast self-exams. And men, you know, as they say, we're notorious for, if we feel it and it doesn't hurt, you know, either our egos get in the way because we don't want to acknowledge, or if all of a sudden we start getting larger breasts, much of that is because of a lot of reasons. Those things imply that there might be a higher estrogen load on the body, i.e., which makes us more susceptible. So I would tell people, again, make sure you have the discussion, particularly if it's in the family history, because that's where the greatest risk factor is. We still don't know exactly why it happens. And when it does, don't sit on it, because it's not going to hurt until you can't do anything about it. Now, the next two, I'll talk about colorectal cancer and prostate cancer. I talk about these because, one, because I'm a survivor of both. I'm 21-year survivor of colorectal cancer and 14-year survivor of prostate cancer. And these strongly run in family history. And with most diseases, family history is really critical. So it's important to ask family members what's going on. It's also important to make sure you have someone that you trust to evaluate you. Now, with colon cancer, it is the second most common cause of cancer death in the United States. And since 2016, the incidence of colon cancer, which had been steadily going down, started to go up. And for some reason, and people are not completely sure why, the incidence of colon cancer declined in people over 65, which is the population we always expected it in, and started to increase the number of cases and the number of deaths in people under 50. And I, you know, before I retired from Washington, D.C. at MedStar, I had 3 patients between the ages of 41 and 49 who had colon cancer. And they were all men, and they all expired within 6 months. And all of them had symptoms that were warnings that they did not pay attention to. One was weight loss, unexplained weight loss. The other was rectal bleeding. The other was abdominal cramping that just wouldn't go away, upset stomach, things like that. And again, what they found is that there are, in the younger population, there's a greater incidence of colon cancer at the very first, or I should say, if you're going from outside to in, the rectum and the sigmoid is where most of the rectal cancers are occurring in people under 50. And so these are tests, and again, this is a screening, these are screening tests that need to be done. The recommendation before 2016 was that people should start screening for colon cancer after the age of 50. It dropped to 45 when they noticed the number of younger people under 50 developing colon cancer. And if you have a family history, and particularly if you're African American and you have a family history of it, you start screening. I tell people, you start screening 10 years before the age at which the index case, the person who had the cancer, was diagnosed. So if you happen to have a family member who developed the cancer at 50, they should start screening at 40. And what are the screening tests? And this is part of the problem, is because people don't like to do the screening. So they have several screening tests. The gold standard is the colonoscopy. It should be done. And again, having had 17 colonoscopies in my life, I will tell you that the worst part of it is the cleaning yourself out and not the actual procedure. Because you're in la-la land while they're doing, you're awake, but you're in la-la land while they're doing the procedure. And it could save your life, as it did for me, because I had no symptoms. And after my wife pushed me to go and have a colonoscopy, is when they found on my very first colonoscopy that I had colon cancer, and I had it on the right side of the colon, which is unusual because it's usually on the left side. So if I'd have waited until I had the weight loss or the blood, I wouldn't be here having a conversation with you. And so it's really important to do that. And now you can do blood tests. There's a new blood test called the Shield blood test, which actually takes the DNA of a cancer cell from the blood and determines. It's a brand new test. I think the jury's still out on whether it's going to be as good as they project it to be. But all that being said, even if that test is positive, you're still going to have to go and have the colonoscopy. Same principle for the stool test, the one that they advertise on television, Cologuard, which is a stool test which measures DNA in stool, cancer cells in stool that have DNA attached to it. Again, if it's positive, you're still going to have the colonoscopy, which is the gold standard. Because if you catch the cancer early enough, when it's less than 2.5 inches in size, the gastroenterologist can literally take it out, and they've cured you up to that point, and now you're in remission. You may have to have frequent colonoscopies every year for a while, but you're still here. So family history is very, very important. Physical inactivity, and this goes back to a question earlier to Dr. Crawford about diet. We know that an increase in red meat, an increase in processed foods, meaning that you're doing this every day, increases your risk for having colon cancer. Again, obesity, and you see a theme here. Obesity is pretty much almost like diabetes, is one of those things that if it's in that family history of you yourself have it, your risk for disease goes up. As it relates to diet and eating, yes, there are people who have proven that if you go on a vegan diet or pescatarian diet, the risks are lower. It doesn't exclude it. The risks are just lower. Simple things: exercise, rest, getting sleep, which is actually really important, drinking fluids, minimizing the alcohol. They say that people who drink 3 glasses of alcoholic beverages a day are at greater risk for colon cancer. And same thing for smoking. And the other thing is diabetes, as well as what we call inflammatory bowel disease. All of those are important risk factors. The treatment for colon cancer will depend on how advanced it is. And then that depends. If it's localized to the colon, simple surgery may suffice. You'll lose part of your colon. I lost half my colon. And the only thing it's done is I have a really rapid transit time. So when I eat now, me and the bathroom are quite friends. So, and in a moment, I'll also tell you about the issue with prostate cancer and the treatment for that, and why urination has become a very special personal thing to me over time. And now we get to prostate cancer. Now, prostate cancer is the leading cause of cancer death in men in the United States. Well, I shouldn't say second to lung cancer. Last year, there were 299,000 new cases and 35,000 deaths. But if you catch prostate cancer early, the 5-year survival rate is 99%. Now, if it's advanced, if the stages are advanced, meaning that it is beyond the prostate, it's in the lymph glands or distant organs, it drops to 37%. And 1 in 8 men during their lifetime will eventually be diagnosed with prostate cancer. Now, my dad had prostate cancer. I had it, and then my younger brother had it. So now my son is at risk, and my nephews all at risk for prostate cancer during their lifetime. And this goes back to what Mr. Smith said about the PSA. It is essentially the one screening test that opens the door to prostate cancer risk. We used to say normal prostate specific antigen, which is what PSA stands for. 4 or less was normal. 5 to 20 was associated with either an enlarged prostate or possibly prostate cancer. But again, my PSA at the time I was diagnosed was 3.5. So if we went by the standards, nothing would have happened. Not until I had the biopsy did they told me that I had cancer on one side of my prostate. And then they gave you the options. Because prostate cancer, for the most part, in 95% of men, there are no symptoms until it is spread beyond the prostate. My dad's first symptoms of prostate cancer was when it was in his spine and he developed back pain and he couldn't move. And that's how they found the prostate cancer. And this is 1988, and his PSA at the time was 103.2. Now, back then, 1988 now, the treatment of choice for prostate cancer was castration, or in English, removing your testicles. And so my Jamaican dad politely told the urologist in front of me, go to you know where, take it, shove it. And my father lived another 12 years with the prostate cancer and died of a stroke. They didn't have anything to do with it. So you can live with it. Now, that being said, I've had friends who died at 41 years old with prostate cancer because at the time they were diagnosed, it was already in their brain. And so going to get screened, and now men used to be reluctant to go to get a rectal exam because it was violating them. And I kind of understood that back then. And in reality, what we realize now is that the rectal exam doesn't really give you a whole lot of information as to whether you have prostate cancer. Because if you think about it, when you're doing the rectal exam, the only thing you're feeling is the posterior or the back of the prostate. You're not feeling the front. And there are many people with cancer in the front of the gland, which of course you would never know about just based on the digital rectal exam. So now there's been a lot of debate because people live long, productive lives with prostate cancer. But I tell you, the dilemma is how do you treat it? And there's basically 4 ways to treat it. If it's a localized cancer, meaning that it is confined to the prostate, and there's a score called the Gleason score. If it's 6 or less, they say that's an early cancer. You can give them what we call active surveillance or watchful waiting. Now, that's an interesting dynamic to me, in that for a person to hear you have cancer, and then the solution at the time is, let's just watch it, come back in a year, we'll do another biopsy, we'll do another PSA and see where you are. Because cancer, to most of us still, when we hear the word cancer, death is the next word that comes to that all the time. So there are people who do it. People in Europe do it much more than we do here in the United States, though it is picked up recently. And then that being said, prostate cancer is worse in African American men. No question about it. It tends to be more advanced at the time of diagnosis. So therefore, the treatment options are less. So the watchful waiting, active surveillance is normally not in vogue. It also tends to be a disease of people over the age of 60. Again, my youngest patient with prostate cancer was 27. And his father, his grandfather, and all his brothers all had cancer, all had prostate cancer, all of them. And so, and the only way we knew was that PSA blood test. That's the only way we knew. And so now the treatment for it. The options are, if it's localized, they can take it out, remove the prostate altogether. And if they have to, they'll remove the nerves and the blood supply that are associated with it. With that comes side effects. The 2 most important side effects are erectile dysfunction and urinary incontinence. And I'll use again myself as the example. I was told by my urologist that after my surgery, I would be able to pee in 6 weeks. It took 9 months, 13 days, and 10 minutes for me to get control of my bladder function. And so what that taught me is that every building I walked into, the very first thing I sought out, where is the restroom? Even to the point when I would go to concerts or meetings, I would strategically sit myself so that I had ready exit to the bathroom, because when you can't control when it's coming, if you get the sensation, you almost need to have already been in the commode. And so I and I don't say that now. I'm fine. Again, 14 years, my PSA has been completely undetectable. And I told my son, when you turn 40, you need to get screened. You just need to get screened. And the intelligent young person went online and read. He said, no, Dad, you're supposed to wait until 10 years before you got diagnosed. You got diagnosed at 54. So I don't have to do this till 44. And I said, you need to just go ahead and do it. You just need to go ahead and do it. But it, again, and most men who get prostate cancer who are African American can survive it. But when we have a bad outcome, it's aggressive. It really is aggressive. And there's no such thing as a good death from disease. There just isn't. There is no such thing as a good death. A good death is going to sleep and not waking up, to me. Everything else is not pleasant. So I'll stop there. I'll take any questions. And I apologize for not having my presentation, but I was learning for the very first time how to do a PowerPoint myself. And I essentially deleted everything I put together before.
Dr. Kennedy, we've had a seminar on health from A to Z tonight. You and Dr. Crawford have been extremely informative, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing not only professional information, but personal information that could impact all of us. Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Because of the hour, for those who might have questions, please email our esteemed Thelma D. Jones, and she will make sure that each of the speakers will get those questions and get an answer back to you. On behalf of the Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Foundation, I want to say it has been an extreme honor for me to MC tonight's program, and I look forward to returning. And now I will turn it over to Thelma D. Jones. Thelma?
Thank you so much, Mike. And of course, thank you both Dr. Crawford and Dr. Kennedy. And I look forward to another round of this discussion. At this point, we are going to hear from the voices of an advocate, Sylvia Powers, who is with NCBC, National Coalition of Breast Centers, who is coming to us out of Dallas, Texas. Sylvia?
Thank you. Out of very cold Dallas, Texas. We're not used to this cold weather, and I think this morning was like 1 degree. Okay, so we're freezing. But first of all, thank you very much, Thelma D. Jones. You are absolutely wonderful. Thelma also serves on my advisory committee. She's also the co-chair of our National Advocates group that helps to put that's going to help put on the 35th Interdisciplinary Conference for the National Consortium of Breast Centers on. So I thank you for your expertise. This program has been absolutely amazing. My husband has prostate cancer. My uncle has colon cancer. And just to hear all this information and also being a writer and getting out health information in our community, talking about mental health, something that we don't address, has been absolutely wonderful. And just on a brief note, I want to say that we had an opportunity to bring Richard Roundtree to Dallas right after he came out and talked about breast cancer. And to see him and to hear him talk about what it was like as a male in Hollywood and to be, have breast cancer and how he tried to hide it for years. And at one point, he had to do a scene where he had to take off his shirt, and he was going to have them design a muscle shirt for him. And they were like, no, we need to have you with your shirt off. And he had to let them know the reason he didn't want to show his chest was because he had a scar on his chest. He had breast cancer. And he almost teared up as he was talking about the impact of being this macho shaft man, shut your mouth, and everybody knew him for. And then to talk about his journey with breast cancer was also amazing. So thank you very much. If you're into, I put my email in the chat. If you are interested in sharing more information, if you're interested in being involved with our advocacy committee, please email me. We would love to have you. As a writer, a couple of you, I've reached out to you, but if you have a story to tell and would like to share it with me, please email me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvia, and I look forward to our continued working relationship and planning for our upcoming conference. And at some point, hopefully after the conference, you will have a chance to come back and tell us more about the conference and how we can improve our advocacy efforts.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to mention a few exciting things, one of which some of you, I don't know if you've journeyed down to the bottom of your program where you see, or the agenda, where you see this long link. That link, I am proud to say, is a story that the World Bank has written about an organization, the World Bank IMF African American Staff Association, which I had the honors of creating in 1999 on the 45th anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education. And as we all know, Brown was the 1954 landmark Supreme Court decision that declared segregation in public schools unconstitutional. That, speaking of my hometown, that same exhibit journeyed to my hometown in May of 2007 for a whole month. The same year, or as a matter of fact, I was just learning that I had breast cancer. And I was honored that when I went to North Carolina, Don, who was not a congressman at the time, was one of the guest speakers during the opening event. And we also had the honor of having the Reverend William Barber there at that event. And now look at where Dr. Barber is these days. So I am so happy that the World Bank has written that story. I think they've done an excellent job on the evolution of the creation of the World Bank IMF African American Association. So please, if you don't get a chance to read it here, I will be generous about sending it out every day for the next couple of months. So I hope you will not only read it, but you will share it with others, and to look at what a group of people can do. It's really about DEI, and I don't have to remind us where DEI is in our current environment. I will also share, I won't read them all in the interest of time, but if you could please focus on our next meeting is Wednesday, March the 19th, where we celebrate Women's History Month. And another important meeting is on Monday, February the 24th, from 7 to 9 p.m. At that meeting, the Southwest Neighborhood Assembly, which is one of the first integrated civic associations in the District of Columbia, will host its annual Black History Month celebration. And I might mention that I am proud to have both created the first Black History program in Southwest, at the Southwest Neighborhood Assembly in 1986. And from there, I created the Black History program at the World Bank using our community model. Well, on Monday night at Arena Stage, the Southwest Neighborhood Assembly's Subcommittee on Black History will host a panel discussion entitled Perspectives on the Legacy of Urban Renewal. I am not for sure if all of you are familiar with urban renewal, but in the 1950s and 60s, Congress at the time, and Don, thank God you weren't there at that time, because we can't blame any of this on you. Congress at the time decided that Southwest, the smallest quadrant here in the District of Columbia, was a sore eye in the grounds of the Capitol. So they decided that they were going to move the people out, destroy or raise the area, rebuild and return the residents. So true to form, they did move, relocate the people. They did raise the ground, rebuild. However, the people who were a part of this land could not return. So more than 23,000 people, mostly African Americans, and over 1,000 businesses were displaced. So next Monday night, we are going to look at perspectives of urban renewal. And I know Robert Jones is on the line, who lives in Durham. Durham also has been affected by urban renewal. And the interesting thing is that when the urban renewal program or project was done in our neighborhood and destroyed the many lives that it did, it became literally a model for other cities to do the same thing. And I have a hard time fathoming how something like this happened in terms of destroying others' lives. So if you're free on Monday night, please join us in looking at the perspectives and the legacy of urban renewal at Arena Stage. And I also have another announcement from Lynette, who is with the Georgiana Thomas Grand Chapter, Order of the Eastern Stars. I know many of you are familiar with that, with the Prince Hall affiliation here in the district. They will hold their annual 5K breast cancer walk Saturday, October the 4th of this year from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. So please consider attending that event, bringing your family and friends. The walk will begin at the historical Masonic Temple on U Street and end at Howard University Cancer Center, which we mentioned a number of times tonight. And that event, that walk, is to support Howard University's Cancer Center, breast cancer research efforts, community outreach, awareness, and care. So if you're interested, please call 301-908-3355. Again, 301-908-3355. Or you can also shoot me an email at thelma.d.jones@outlook.com. And I want to thank again all of our wonderful speakers, especially our sponsor, the Southwest Business Improvement District, for their 4th consecutive year. And with our sponsorship, it's important that you know that we use those funds for financial toxicity, which are terms to explain the challenges, the financial challenges that men and women have in going through breast cancer, whether it's around transportation, utilities, equipment as a part of their treatment. And recently we had the honors of assisting a breast cancer survivor whose vehicle became inoperable during the holidays. So, you know, a vehicle for someone who is physically challenged is like a lifeline, it's lifeblood. And that the fact that we were able to assist that person, we were happy. Several months ago, a lady had a utility bill of $2,300, who had not had electricity for several months. You know, when our electricity go out for a storm and we know eventually it's going to come back on, but when you're from January to October without electricity and you have 6 of your grandchildren, 3 of which are little boys, just like Don was when he was a little boy, you don't want to be without electricity that long. Well, we were happy to be able to restore her electricity so that she could not only have hope, but she could see the light again. So that is what we do with our sponsorship. And I cannot thank the SWBID for not only supporting the Thelma D. Jones Breast Cancer Fund, but having a wider impact on their donation. So to our speakers each, Mike, our MC, thank you for shepherding us through this. To our esteemed, the Honorable Donald G. Davis, thank you. To our 2 guest speakers, Dr. Kermit Crawford and Dr. Richard Kennedy, thank you. Let's give them all a hand. And to Sylvia Powers for sharing the work that she's doing with NCBC. And to our audience, thank you so much. I will turn it back to you, Mike, for 30 seconds of closing remarks.
I think you said it all. I just want to say thank you. And all of us have the responsibility of being not only our own advocates, but our community's advocate. We know, we have the information, so we have to depart it, share it with others, okay? Thank you so much, everyone, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Whatever.